I would, but I don't know how to be rich. I just know how to be broke. And
I don't think I was ever rich. So
isn't that the point of being an entrepreneur? Is that you just go and you just go for your dreams and make the world happen?
it's not about the money, it's about building stuff. It's the creative process, just like,
Gotcha.
when you're playing music, right? And you're together with other people, and it's about the team in itself. And so that creative process that is the most important. Like, getting rich is not a thing of focus. It can definitely be a huge benefit, but at the end of the day, it's about waking up in the morning and feeling satisfied at what you're doing and waking up to, you know.
It's like they're too good.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, that was an insane tour because Meshuggah was one of the main influences for us as a band when we
Yeah.
started out. Um, it was Meshuggah, Fear Factory, and Strapping Young Lad, and going on tour. So one of the most craziest things I think for us as a band was that we actually got to tour with our idols
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Like the bands and the musicians that inspired us to compose the music we did back then, we ended up meeting, and becoming friends with them. And that was like dream come true, at least for me. Also, I know also for the other guys, we were completely starstruck. But going on that tour with Meshuggah, I mean, nowadays they've grown to a huge size, and you see so many bands out there that are trying to, copy them or get inspired by them. And there's so many people loving their music. Like, we were so fortunate to tour with them back then, standing on stage, watching them play every night. And I remember I was standing with Per from The Haunted on multiple nights in a row, and watching like Thomas Hockett playing the drums. And all of us were just looking at each other, and we're just thinking, these guys are not human. They're simply from another planet. They're playing like flawlessly, and we're
Yeah.
like, this is insane, And we had such an amazing experience, and that was during the Catch 33
Yeah.
tour. And I remember that, like, when that album came out, I was like, I couldn't get into it. I didn't understand it, but at the end of the tour, that was the only thing I was listening to. It was like you got so inspired also by the other bands on that tour. It was just that whole dynamic behind of being exposed to so many impressions. It was just a really special time. And more talks about my hair, but the Destroy Race Improve album. So that when that came out on the market, all of a sudden I kind of thought, like, to myself, okay, death metal is actually for girls now. This is absolutely so aggressive, so new, that it kind of blew out like every other band that I was listening to back then.
Yeah.
And that was the same thing the other guys felt, basically, because we all started maturing, right? And I remember I also played before we started Mnemic. I played session guitar for a band called Mercenary,
Mhm.
also from for a very short, it was a very short stint, but my heart was kind of like into this because I started becoming really tired of death metal, brutal death metal, of melodic death metal. That was what Mercenary were playing. And then I got super inspired by Meshuggah, and then my heart started beating for this type of music. And to a certain degree, I met up with the drummer Brian and the guitar player Rune, and they obviously started jamming together, and they were super inspired by especially Meshuggah, a little bit Fear Factory, Strapping Out Loud. And when I came into, like, we started jamming together, when I came into the picture, I started copying 100% Meshuggah riffs. Like, everything I was doing, it was like dun, 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 dun. And they were like, no, no, dude, you have to stop that. So they had a really, I mean, I have to thank those guys, because otherwise I would have ended up ripping off, Destroy, Race, Improve, and making it sound like every other band out there. But those guys had a very analytical process to the way they were composing the music, and I got super inspired by that, because they basically said, if it comes close to sounding like this, we're not going to use it. And that was the way we actually composed the music when we started. You can get inspired to a certain extent, but it can end up sounding exactly like that, and you kind of lose that uniqueness. So yeah, that's exactly because when I think we started roughly around also when Follow the Leader came out by Korn. There was a lot of, and that's another thing. There was a lot of new metal that got released back then. And I remember we played with a lot of new metal bands that eventually copied other new metal bands. But we wanted to take like elements from the bands that we loved and try to create something original because we saw them as 100% original.
Yeah.
But originality comes from many parameters, like the people behind creating the music, the inspirations these people have, plus how well they play together, the uniqueness of the music, the product itself, the way they communicate, the imagery, the brand, and so on. It's a lot of things that play together. That is why Meshuggah are Meshuggah, more or less. It's the people behind it, and you know. So where I'm trying to go with this is to say that we try to have this very analytical thought process when we compose the music, but it was kind of a reflection of what was on the market back then. Like for instance, you know, Follow the Leader came out, Destroy Race Improved, or Chaosphere came out, and so on. So we kind of tried to, we got inspired by those, but trying to stay away, not to sound too much like them. So that is why you kind of hear like syncopated stuff with straightforwardness, you know, so you kind of get the idea of the new metal elements into it.
Yeah, some of it
Now,
almost sounds like Rob Zombie, kind of like
I mean,
is it
even
Rammstein?
yeah, even Hellbilly Deluxe, when it came out, we got really inspired by that. Of what we like for our band, just to put things in perspective. Like when we started out, we had some success. I would call it some success in Denmark. At the same time, when we went to the US, we had Volbeat. They started growing, and that band again, it's a combination of many things. It's a combination of the people, of the inspirations, the music you put together. But for Volbeat, that was just the music itself. It's one guy. And Volbeat, in my opinion, is a complete edge case. It's an anomaly, and that is primarily because you have one guy has this voice that is so unique and so accessible, it attracts thousands and thousands of people because it's like butter, you know.
He's a superstar.
Yeah, he's a superstar, but I mean, yes, that's what he is. But he's also an anomaly, right? It's an edge case because there's so many in the market that are trying to do what he's doing or just composing music, and there's so very few, so very little, like 0.1% of the market that actually have 100% total success in what they do, and that's building a really big business, and that's what he's built so far. But then you have like really small businesses. You have like it's like a huge mountain of you know artists that are trying to get to the top, and it's very hard to get there because of the competition, because of the uniqueness itself. And that is what Volbeat did when and that's another thing. You have social media nowadays. You need to have consistency. You need to have visibility all the time. But what happened back in the day when Volbeat came onto the market, they actually started, when they started playing small club shows, they actually started to grow organically. Like people started talking about them. And then you had more and more people come to the shows, and that, like on a trajectory, it went really fast, like extremely fast. For other bands, like for bands like us, we had to use, you know, we had to tour multiple times to gain visibility and so on. People wouldn't do the word of mouth. So for a band like ours, you went at it for such a long time until you got completely burned out because the trajectory or the curve didn't go up. You know, it just kind of flatlined. For an artist like Volbeat, they completely exploded, and we have so many bands in Denmark that, you know, are at the same level as us, as we were back then. You have Mercenary, Ill Disposed, and so on, and then you have all these Hatesphere, yes, especially Hatesphere. It's a great band. I mean, we had a lot of great bands back then, and some of them are still playing today.
Loans, you know, so if you can keep your first record deal short, you know, maybe 3 records, 4 at the most, then on that, if you become successful, then you kind of can right all the wrongs of your previous record deal, right? And then you basically go, all right, we take it on the chin, but we had to essentially give up that ownership in order to get the capital and the promotion of the label so that they can, once you get to the point where now you're your brand is solid and you have fans, then you can be the one to kind of exploit the, what all the benefits of that. And that, but but you also need to hopefully during that time then have learned the business, which, I feel like, there's the bands that obviously do the best is when they have people within the band that do understand that and learn and can be self-sufficient and work with the managers and work with the labels and have a real kind of first-hand understanding of that, because not every band is blessed with members that are good at that stuff.
Completely and exactly correct. And that's also, yeah, I mean, that's the exploitation number one from labels on young musicians that don't really understand that. But having someone that actually understands the business is a little bit business savvy. I mean, I wish I was back then. I mean, I was completely clueless back then. The
Yeah,
only thing I was thinking about was Meshuggah and girls. It was.
that's what I was going to ask you. I was like, were you, given that later on in life you had gone to get into these ventures, you weren't like the business guy in the band?
No, I was the one that wanted progress. And I was the guy that, that couldn't sit still. So
Yeah,
if no one else was doing it, then I did it. I was like, okay, we need to move from A to B. What do we need to do there?
yeah,
Then I took initiative. So I was the guy that always took initiative on things, but I was very young back then. I was very young, a tad ignorant, a tad very arrogant. I made a lot of mistakes back then, and if I was actually a super nice guy back then, and I had like I was maybe business savvy, at least we could have gotten a lot further. But I was young, dumb, and naive, and I thought we came. I call it we came from the Pantera generation, the Pantera home video
yeah.
generation. It was
I
about
know.
yeah, right. So it was about being a rock star, smashing dressing rooms apart, partying. But now I kind of see there's such a huge shift nowadays. Bands are so much more professional nowadays. At
Yeah,
least the bands I've met these last 2 years. And then I was just thinking, how dumb were we back then? I mean, like, we could have gotten so much more progress and success by thinking a little bit more analytically, instead of just signing any contract we would get, just to think that, oh, we'll be going on tour, really short-sighted, like on a very short term, not a long term. We were never thinking long term at all, but it was more about fun and games, and we didn't realize. I mean, as you said earlier, it was about signing those three the record deals for the three first albums, and then laying the foundation. Then further on, maybe having success. But the problem was that you spent so much energy on those 3 to 4 albums you signed. The years passed by, and then you got completely burned out by doing so many tours.
yeah,
And at some point, people get older, bills start stacking up. You become kind of an adult, and then you're like, okay, I cannot go on tour. I have a girlfriend now. I have a kid. Things just become complicated in life, and that's part of becoming older.
yeah.
So yeah, the whole transition from having Michael in the band and going to having him leave the band. He was part of the songwriting process in the beginning, and when he left the band, the whole fundament kind of crashed for us. We had to find someone else. The brand got a little bit hurt and so on, and we were in a pivotal moment, because the record label were saying, "Oh, this is your master of puppets. Now it's make it or break it." And I think
That's so much pressure to put on a band.
exactly, a lot of pressure there. And especially after playing, we were fortunate to open like one of the biggest festivals in Denmark, the Roskilde Festival, back in 2004. We had a booking agent that nowadays works with the biggest festivals here in Denmark as well. And then at the same time, when we opened the Roskilde Festival, we went to Germany, played Rock am Ring, Rock am Park. We had all of these amazing festivals. I mean, we were so not ready to play those type of festivals. Like our gear wasn't working correctly. We didn't have any stage production that could fit one of those huge stages. Our backdrops were painted by ourselves, by hand. It was so scraped, and going through playing all those festivals. We ended up playing in Germany and Fear Factory were playing on the same festival we had. We used to play Self-Biased Resistor by Fear Factory as a cover song. And then we ended up having Bert and C. Bell coming on stage singing with us. And that was, again, one of those things that was like, did that just really happen? One of our idols came on stage, so we got to experience so many things, met Lemmy at some bar, standing next to him, drinking. It was completely mind-blowing. But then all of a sudden, the record label was saying, you have to make your Master of Puppets. This is a make it or break it. And you're like, okay, let's go to the US. Let's record where Megadeth recorded. Let's put all this money behind the album. And let's also find a new singer and try to write the best record ever. When you have that discrepancy in the band's development, it's very hard to make something of consistency. And I think the record, I mean, what you're saying right now, that it's a great record. Yeah, I think it was an okay record, but it was really a mess. On the other hand, it was also, again, times were changing. There were new bands on the market. I think right before we recorded the album, I think I met Jeff Walker from Carcass. I met him at the airport in Copenhagen, and then I walked up to him. I saw him. He had like short hair back then. Carcass hadn't played for many years, and then I walked up to him and I was like, "I'm your biggest fan. You're Jeff from Carcass. My name is Mircea. I play in this band called Mnemic. Can I buy you a beer?" And he was completely cool. It's like, "Yeah, sure, mate. Let's go to the bar." And then I spoke with him. He gave me his phone number. It's like, yeah, because he was on his way to Finland. And he gave me his phone number. And then when we got to LA, and I came to think of, wouldn't it be cool to have Jeff sing on the album? And somehow, and that was, we were recording together with Christian from Fear Factory back then. Somehow, I don't know, Jeff came to LA, and he also brought, I don't know why, but Shane Embury from Napalm Death was there as well.
Well, he's probably playing with Brujeria.
Yeah, yes, that's what it was. Yeah, now I remember. They were both playing with Brujeria. I remember that. It was super hot in LA, and I think I spoke with Christian, or I called Jeff or something like that. I invited them, and they came over, and they ended up singing on the album as well. And that was like a weird combination, having someone from Carcass and someone from Napalm Death on the album, and we're like half new metal inspired and all this stuff. It was like a really weird time. We released that album. We toured a lot. We also, and a lot of good things came out of that, because, and this is the most mind-blowing thing, because we after we did the tour with you guys, I think this was back in January 2007. Now I remember it. We had to go back to Europe because we just got on tour. We got the tour confirmed with Deftones, UK tour with Deftones. And that was when Chi was part of the band as well. That was an amazing experience as well, playing shows for 4,000 to 5,000 people per night as an opener. And obviously it was because we were all connected somehow, because Christian, Christy, Steph. I even ended up New Year's Eve at B-Real's house from Cypress Hill, because they were friends and so on. And when I tell this to people, I feel kind of like nobody really believes me. Like, I was like, yeah, I was home at one time, New Year's Eve, I was home at this guy from Cypress Hill, Be Real, Insane in the Membrane. Does that ring a bell? And they're like, yeah, whatever, dude. I'm like, nobody really believes that.
Well, the thing is, I mean, I've spent my time in Europe, and I especially love Scandinavia. It's probably my favorite place, and all of that whole, just, I don't care if it's Finland, I don't care if it's Sweden, Oslo, I feel like you guys just do it better. But there's no more different place than Los Angeles, right? Than, like, it is a whole other world. And especially back then, it was just you guys spent a lot of time there, so just how it'd be. You'd be at the Rainbow, and all of a sudden you would see like Slash, and then you would see like Lemmy, and you're like some random famous porn star or something. You're like, what is this?
I'm Jeremy.
Well, yeah, there you go. But what I'm saying is, like, it's just wild, and you never know. You'd end up at some party or going somewhere, and it was just its own thing. LA, it's own special sauce.
Exactly. Lots of crazy people living there. It's a circus. It's a crazy place. I remember, speaking about the Rainbow, I was standing peeing in the toilet, and then next to me, this guy with a really big beard was standing there, and I looked at him. It was Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. I can always brag about that, saying, "Hey, I've been standing right next to Billy Gibbons," right? And then yeah, you would have the guys from Cypress Hill partying there. I also met Dino when he was out of Fear Factory. He played the very first Divine Heresy to me in his big Hummer. That was also like mind blowing. You know, being young and being among these superstars was, yeah, it was a complete, yeah, mind fuck.
Well, one of the things
Um,
I was thinking about you talking about, that era, 2007, is like I think you guys were almost ahead of your time, right? Because if you look like right around that time, bands like Periphery and Tesseract and like that whole like gent kind of scene started coming around. And I think you guys, and dude, especially on the Passenger record, I think you guys were doing stuff, like I said, because to me, that record, it's like less new metal than the earlier stuff. It has a little more of those like kind of complex rhythms and just a certain, like I said, that progressive flair that I really like. And I think it was so like that genre that was started to take off, that was really influenced by Meshuggah and bands like that. And then it was also a weird time because record sales were like tanking right around that time, but streaming wasn't a thing really yet. So that didn't come around for another 3 or 4 years. So I think there was, and then also the what was popular in metal was shifting, right? It was that's when like deathcore was coming out, and like it was just those times are always and we went through it, even though what we were doing, what you guys were doing was very different, where you're just the industry changes, what people are into changes, where you're at in your career arc, it sometimes just happens at that right time where things just trend downward somehow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think back then in 2007, as you said, like there was a lot of deathcore coming out. Times were changing, but we also got completely burned out from the touring that we did. I mean, at least 6 months out of the year we toured, or 7 months or something like that. Because I remember we did the first US tour, and I think that was over a month long, maybe. Then we went to Europe, did the UK. Then we were home for a little bit. Then we went out back again with in Europe. And that year, actually, we ended up supporting Metallica. Yeah, I remember we were oh yeah, now I remember. So we were supposed to play with the Deftones at the Brixton Academy. Everyone was looking completely forward to this show because it was Brixton Academy.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Chino's vocals, he gets something with his throat, and they cancel that show. And just imagine how completely bummed out and sad we were. It was the last date of the tour, Brixton Academy, go out with a bang and everything.
Yeah.
No, instead they're like, no, unfortunately we have to cancel the show, guys. We're gonna spend the entire day in a parking lot in your tour bus. And imagine like how horrible that was. But all of a sudden I received an email from our booking agent saying like, yeah, Lars would love to have you guys in Volbeat to support them when they come to Denmark sometime in May, June, or whatever. And then getting that email was like, guys, I cannot believe this. We were like completely shocked about it. Like the same day, you'd have such a huge bummer. We're not going to play Brixton Academy, but wait a minute, we're going to play with Metallica, open up for Metallica. That was completely, yeah, really mind blowing.
Well, I think
And
that has to be validating because, I mean, Denmark's not a big country. There's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of really good bands, but clearly you guys were one of the bands that was making a mark, right? That actually made an impact enough that, because again, there's no participation trophies on that end of things. Like Lars and the band would not put you on the show if you guys
wait,
didn't.
wait. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh no,
There's
please,
actually
please interrupt. Please interrupt.
there's a catch to that. So some of it's talent, some of it is sales. Because eventually, on the Deftones tour, the drummer's name is Ape, and his drum tech was also Lars Ulrich's tech. So he was a Danish guy. And I found out, like in the beginning of the tour, he was Danish. It was Lars Ulrich's drum tech, and I was like, I need to give this guy a CD. And then I went to him. I was like, hey, I know that you're working for Lars. We're from Denmark. Obviously, I spoke in Danish. And I was like, you really need to give this CD to Lars. You really need to make him hear him because we are super fans of Metallica, of course. Had to say that, obviously. And I had to tell him that we've been working so hard, getting where we are now. It would be a dream come true for us to play with Metallica one day. Nothing granted. I mean, if he could give the CD to him, that would be great. And then, you know, a week or what was it, 10 days after, we get an email from our booking agent saying that Metallica wants us and Volbeat to support them. So part of it maybe is because, so probably Lars heard the CD and he thought, okay, this sounds kind of cool. They're from Denmark, great. Yeah, let's throw them in there with Volbeat or something like that. So part of it is luck. Part of it is also doing, you know, something proactive. The sales part, which is something that I've been good at, obviously, throughout all this time in the band. And, you know, I think last time somebody asked me about like what I was doing in the band, I basically told them I write emails, right? It's not, I don't like, so,
They lead email.
yeah, lead email, exactly. Yeah, because you need to have somebody pushing the band from A to B to have some progress. So some of it was probably the music, something else, a little bit of luck, timing. You know, it wasn't because we're the best band, but we kind of did work to get there.
Well,
So
I'm saying this best subjective, but you're on the Deftones tour, right? So you're doing big things. That's a big tour. That's like an A+ tour that a million bands would stab each other to get. So you're out in the big leagues doing things. You know, you have your Nuclear Blast is currently, I think, the biggest metal label. It used to be Roadrunner. Now it's Nuclear Blast. You're signed. You're doing things. You have records that, you know, it's not. And again, they're not going to listen to that record and go, oh, it's kind of good, so we'll put them on. It's like, no, they're doing things like I'm telling you, that was not no bullshit. Did they, by the way, when you played the show, did you get to meet them? Did they say hello?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I remember, because we played, that was the first time we played with them back in 2007. And I remember actually James Hetfield came out at the side of the stage and watched us play. And I think I didn't notice that, but one of the guys noticed it, and he was about to shit his pants. That's what he told me after when we were done. When we were done with the show, they actually came to our dressing rooms. We started, you know, to say hi. Hey, I'm James. Hey, I'm Lars. Okay, insane. But that's something that they were extremely nice, super cool to speak to. They you know, they're a bunch of gentlemen at the end of the day. And obviously they have a huge business, but they also have respect for everyone, I believe, and that's again part of the business savviness. We met them, we spoke with them. I cannot remember that much because I was super young. I was super starstruck, obviously, because it was like, oh shit, this is James Hetfield, and obviously it's, you know, one of the greatest guitar players in the world, one of the biggest bands in the world. But that was a fantastic point in our lives and our careers to meet our idols, sort to say. But the good part about it was that I just kept going. And that's again, coming back to the consistency thing. We played with them in 2007. And then afterwards, I got to know their, so Lars's assistant back then. It was a guy who obviously helped Lars with everything practical. It was his PA, but I got to know him. You know, I created that connection, and eventually it led to more shows the following year, where we ended up playing in Europe, in a few countries with supporting Machine Head, so going on tour with Machine Head and Metallica. So that was even next level when you have a band that is actually struggling to pay the bills at home, you know, going out, and that's the cool but also the sad part about being a musician. You know, you get to experience so much joy and happiness, you know, and having these crazy experiences playing with these huge bands out there. And you know, as you said earlier about the timing, maybe we were, at the wrong time in the market, because you had Periphery, you had all those other bands. But I think those bands are far more technical and they play way better than we did. But I don't know what it is so different. I mean, when it comes to success, because I think we did have accessible music to a certain extent. Maybe it was, yeah, maybe it wasn't that accessible as Periphery and all the other bands. But I think one of the bands that also started at the same time as us was actually Textures from Holland.
Great band.
Um, yeah, that's a great band. But in the beginning, the very first album, that was actually, I remember when I heard it and I thought, like, why should I listen to this? It sounds exactly like Destroy Race Improve, right? It wasn't that original. That's at least what I thought personally. But then later on, when they developed their sound, a fantastic band.
Was that band, that album Silhouettes? I think that was the one I really liked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of hit a wall at some